have the Devil's Bible. The Devil's Bible, otherwise known as the Codex Gigas, is a massive book said to harbor an immense amount of negative energy. I mean, duh, it's called the Devil's Bible for a reason. So basically, legend goes that this 157-pound book was written by a monk. But this monk broke his spiritual vows, and so he was sentenced to be sealed behind a brick wall and left to die. But the night before his death, he realized he wouldn't be able to finish this book. So he summoned Lucifer and asked him to complete the book for him. In return, he offered him his soul. So legend goes that the book was finished by the devil himself. What's creepier is that some of the pages are filled with drawings of the devil and other demonic entities. On one page, there's a 19-inch drawing of Satan. The book also contains a bunch of dark rituals and texts. If the book got in the wrong hands, who knows what damage they could do.
Coming in at number 9, we have the Voynich manuscript, a book that has baffled all of the best minds in the world. It was discovered by antiquarian book dealer Wilfred M. Voynich near Rome in an old chest in 1912. It immediately caught his attention due to its lackluster appearance, which was unlike all the other pretty ones in the compartment. But what he found inside became a mystery that keeps getting stranger. Apparently the codex was purchased by Roman Emperor Rudolph II, who believed it was written by Roger Bacon. But Bacon lived in the 12th century and the paper carbon dated to the 15th century, so already Inside the book has remained incomprehensible to even the most impressive cryptographers and linguists. They've identified at least 25 to 30 characters, and though the writing and illustrations don't make sense, it doesn't appear to be gibberish. Alan Turing, all the way to artificial intelligence, have all taken turns, but to no avail. From images of planets long extinct and intricate astrological signs, no one knows what the hell it means, but many speculate that it could have been written, get ready for this, by aliens. Of course, when we don't know the answer, aliens! It's the only logical solution. But if it does belong to aliens, what if they want it back?
And at number 8 we have Untitled Grimoires. Grimoires are witches' spell books, but it's said that they need to be burned after the witch's death. However, this one was not burned. Instead, it was kept, and in 2013 it sold on a website. It was sold for $13,865. That's a lot of money for a book. But here's the thing, the book came with a warning. It said, and I quote, "To those not of the craft, the reading of this book is forbidden. Proceed no further, or justice will exact a swift and terrible retribution, and you will surely suffer at the hand of the craft." So basically, the book is cursed if it falls into the wrong hands. This book is also said to contain a number of curses, enchantments, and spells. Also, it tells you how to perform an exorcism, you know, just in case you summon a demon and then everything goes wrong. I mean, any book that tells you how to summon ghosts and demons should just be burned. I'm sorry.
Coming in at number 7, we have Tamino's Hell, and here is yet another book that you should never read, because if you do, your lives and the lives of those you love could be in jeopardy. Tamino's Hell was written by Yomoto Uniko in a book that's titled The Heart is Like a Rolling Stone. Legends of how this curse started vary, but results such as vomiting glass and loved ones dying tragic deaths continue to be associated with the poem. One radio show host tried to read it aloud on air, and halfway through started to feel ill and disturbed and wasn't able to finish it. He continued to feel ill, and a few days later he got into an accident that resulted in him having to get 7 stitches. To this day, he tries not to even think about the poem and warns other people against it. But I thought I'd surprise everyone today and read the poem out loud, so we'll see. But let's see if this myth is true, shall we? Here's the poem. Just kidding! I'm not gonna read it out loud, and nor should you.
In our 6th spot we have the Book of Soiga. Sounds weird, I don't know if I pronounced it wrong, but we're gonna roll with that. This book has quite the history behind it. So it was created in the 16th century and is a Latin essay all about demonology. Apparently, there are only 2 copies in existence. One was owned by a man named John Dee and his brother. They both were determined to translate the entire book. Upon translating it, they figured it was a book filled with dark rituals and incantations. But the last 36 pages were untranslatable. He became so obsessed with trying to figure out what the last pages read that it drove him to madness. After his death, the books were lost for the longest time until 1994. That's when 2 copies were found. Now legend goes that those that successfully decipher the final pages of the book will die within 3 years. So it's up to you. Will you tempt fate and decipher the pages? Or should we burn the book so that no one else dies? I'll go with the latter.
The Orphan Story, coming in at number 5. This book started out innocent until it started racking up victims. The Orphan Story is an adventure book about a Spanish teen who ventures to Lima to party like there's no tomorrow, and then there's other adventures and romantic stories and yada yada yada. It was written by an Augustinian friar named Martin de Leon between 1605 to 1615, who'd also been to Lima, but he never wanted to get it published for fear that it would taint his chances in becoming archbishop, but that didn't stop people from trying, and maybe it should have. When it was rediscovered in the Hispanic history archives, many were discouraged from working on it as it was believed to be cursed. Dun dun dun! Those who had tried to publish it before had all died, one from a random car accident and the other from an entirely mysterious disease. No one touched it for years until one brave man took on the task once more. It was actually published for the first time in 2018, and the publisher believes that the curse has finally been lifted. Not that there wasn't a curse in the first place, but like maybe things will get worse now, who knows? Maybe the curse is waiting for, I don't know, 3 years.
In our 4th spot, we have the Book of Sacred Magic. This 15th century book was written by a man named Abra Malin, who was a mage, aka that's just a fancy word for a magician. Well, he wrote this book for his son, and apparently it's cursed, because why not give your son a cursed book? I mean, it probably wasn't cursed when he got it, but that's besides the point. Anyways, in the 1900s, the book was translated into English, and soon after, people deemed it a curse. Throughout the book, it talked about rituals on how to control your demons. Abra believed that every person had their own demon, not like a metaphorical one, but like a literal one. It also talked about how to perform other supernatural acts. In the end, it was believed that whoever owns a copy will be haunted by the spirits, and bad luck will befall on them. Again, possessions and haunting and bad luck, it's a no from me.
Coming in at number 3 with the Necronomicon. Again, I'm gonna bring this up, but you know that scene from The Mummy when Evie is like, what harm has ever come from reading a book? And then proceeded to unleash hell by reading the Book of the Dead? Well, lesson learned, right? No, because the Necronomicon, also called the Book of the Dead, is an ancient grimoire, and as we know, we should burn grimoires, but we don't. And it's bound in human skin and has inspired many horror films like Evil Dead. This book is so powerful, some even say one word from its pages and horrors beyond your wildest nightmares will emerge. This book was featured as a fictional object in H.P. Lovecraft's stories, and he even allowed authors to cite it as a source so it could become more real. Lovecraft insisted it was made up, but many tried and true fans of the occult think otherwise. They think that the book in fact exists, but it's hidden so it will never cause any harm. HP says the idea for the book came to him in a dream, but many say that the spirit of the book chose Lovecraft to reveal it, meaning there are people hunting for the real thing. My advice? Don't. Leave it alone. Again, we don't need it. Demons can stay where they are, okay?
In our 2nd spot, we have The Great Omar. This is another book that has quite the dark past. So basically, in 1909, a man named Sangorsky decided to create a much fancier version of the book, The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. I'm gonna apologize right now, I know I totally butchered that name. Now, he bejeweled it and made the cover look absolutely beautiful. It took him 2,500 hours to create. In the end, it had 1,500 precious/semi-precious stones, 4,967 leather inlays, and 600 sheets of 22-karat gold leaf. It's honestly a very beautiful book. But the thing is, no one wanted to buy this super expensive book when they could literally just get one for much cheaper. But eventually it was put up for auction, but it only sold for £450. Now, the book was shipped, but it never got to the buyer. Why? Well, the ship it was being transported on was the Titanic, and the book went down with the ship. Then only a few weeks later, the creator of this book mysteriously drowned. Ain't that a freaky coincidence? But that's not all. A second version was created called The Great Omar II. It was then placed in a bank vault. but the bank was hit by a bomb during the London Blitz of World War II, and this copy was destroyed as well. Then a third copy was created because they didn't learn their lesson, and it was donated to the British Library, where apparently it's still to this day. But due to its dark past, many believe that this book is cursed, and that bad things will happen to whoever owns it.
Coming in at number 1, you know what sucks is that there's a PDF version of this book that Lindsay and I found, and we were both like, no! Like, we opened it by accident, we're like, no, I don't want to read this, I don't want to read this, I don't want to read this. It's really creepy. So this one is The Lesser King of Solomon. The Lesser King of Solomon, or the Goetia, is one of the most famous grimoires and contains a summoning spell for over 72 demons, and no one knows who wrote it. Written entirely in Latin, the book dates back to the 14th and 15th century, though any remaining manuscripts date to the 16th and 18th. Legend has it that King Solomon originally had it written for his son and asked him to bury it with him in his grave when he died. But supposedly, a group of Babylonian philosophers discovered it while repairing his tomb, and one of them was said to have had a vision sent to him by an angel that told him to hide the book from the unworthy. He did so by casting a spell on it, which clearly didn't work. The first few chapters contained instructions on how to summon and trap demons in this world, which, by the way, why? I doubt they're as sexy as Lil Nas, okay? But if you're looking for love, the book also contains instructions on how to find it and also how to become invisible. Obviously now, copies of this book can be found on the internet, but please, for the love of all this stuff, like, just don't. Just burn it, you know? Have someone burn it from the internet. It's just too much out there. We don't want to know what's on the other side just yet, anyways. Starting off at number 10, we have The Stand by Stephen King. This book is probably one of those books you should put off reading until after the pandemic is over, whenever that is. We all know Stephen King is quite literally the king of horror, but this novel will hit home way too hard and fill you with ideas of what could have been. The Stand is about an apocalyptic world that fell to a deadly flu-like virus intended to be used as a biological weapon. Already this sounds a little familiar, but it gets worse. In this book, King introduces one of his most famous villains, Randall Hall. Once the outbreak takes hold, people start having visions of a benevolent woman and a terrifying dark man who is, of course, plotting to destroy the world. I'll stop now before I add any spoilers. Bear in mind, this book is a commitment. There are two versions, the 400-page one Stephen's publisher forced him to publish, or the 1200-page unabridged version. Either way, get comfy and leave the light on, because once you start, you won't be able to put this book down. Also, they made a TV show about it, so check that out too. But after you read the book.
In our number 9 spot today, we have The Collector. The Collector is a book that was written in 1963 by John Fowles and is a pretty wild thriller. This book is written from two separate perspectives and is about an absolute psycho who kidnaps a young woman who is an art student. He keeps her locked up in the cellar of his farmhouse, and part of the novel is from the point of view of the captor, and the other half is told from the perspective of the woman he has kidnapped. The beginning of the novel is from his point of view, and it details his obsession with the woman and why he has formed this horrible plan. The part from her point of view is detailed through diary entries that she's made rather than regular narration. The whole book is an absolute roller coaster and is extremely interesting. Of course, both characters have quite a few developments over the course of the story, and sometimes things can get extremely dark, but the ending is one that none of us really ever saw coming.
Coming in at number 8, we have The Cask of Amontillado by Edgar Allan Poe. Dude, I'm not claustrophobic, and obviously there are tons of Edgar Allan Poe short stories, books we could have used, but damn. We couldn't make this list without featuring him at least once, and this story felt right. Warning, some spoilers ahead, but also, this was written in like 1846, you've had time. The Cask of Amontillado is a story of revenge. Montresor was deeply insulted by his rival, Fortunato, and uses his fondness for sherry to exact his revenge. But the way he does it, and the way the story builds around it, is so skillful. It's so horrible you want to look away, but you can't. Montresor planned everything to a T, even making Fortunato bait himself into his own trap. Fortunato ends up watching Montresor build a wall of thick stone, trapping him inside a deep cellar forever. I think that's what gets me about this story, is that he's watching his own demise and he can't do anything about it. It terrifies me. Oh man, so maybe I am claustrophobic. Maybe. So anyway, check that one out.
In our number 7 spot today, we have Tender is the Flesh. Tender is the Flesh is a dystopian novel that was originally written in Spanish by Agustina Bazterrica. This novel is based in a world where a terrible virus has wiped out all animals except for humans. Instead of living a vegan lifestyle, humans have adapted in a way where cannibalism is now legal. This novel describes the process of breeding and slaughtering humans just for the means of consumption. Humans who are bred for food have their vocal cords removed in order to make them easier to control, and because of the fact that meat meant for human consumption should certainly not be able to speak. The main character of this story is a man named Marcos, and he is a human meat supplier who is a little unsure about these new societal rules, but we also delve into his personal life and the things he has gone through previous to this point. Marcos is divorced, and everything changes when he is given one of the female humans who is meant to help with the production of the human meat. This story is absolutely insane, and while the entire premise is quite dark, the twist this book has is truly unbelievable.
So coming in at number 6, we have 1984 by George Orwell. I mean, duh, we're putting this book on here, of course. It's terrifying. This is the most terrifying love story you will ever read, and you should. This book perfectly illustrates the bone-chilling possibilities that could happen if a government decided to take totalitarianism as far as it could go. It's been banned in the past for its social, sexual, political content, which is hilariously ironic because the whole book is about what happens if censorship goes too far. From the horrors of erasing human beings through unpersoning, persecuting people for thought crimes, the creation of newspeak for abolishing love, all the way to the most gruesome kinds of torture, like, think Game of Thrones. There are images I cannot erase from my mind. I remember knowing that Orwell wrote this as a commentary on Stalinism, but I didn't expect the love story. The two main characters endeavor to commit a small rebellion, which is to simply fall in love, because that's the only thing that they can do to fight this massive establishment. The way Orwell finds ways of igniting the humanity in his readers in order to highlight the terror of the circumstances they're in, it's haunting. The scary element of this book isn't a killer clown or a monster with 18 eyes. Instead, it's absolute power. This book outlines the terror of power in a world that's gone too far, and you won't be the same after you read it.
In our number 5 spot today, we have A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing. A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing is a stream of consciousness novel that was written by Emer McBride. This novel tells the story of a girl growing up in a traditional Irish family and all the struggles that she faces. At a first glance, this might not seem like a horrible thing that should be feared, but this novel goes deep. The writing style is absolutely fantastic and really highlights exactly what this character is going through. We never get a chance to know the name of the girl, but we get to know so much about her long-winded Catholic mother who is cruel, her disabled brother, and her very creepy uncle. Without giving much away, this really does set the scene for what's to come. This book can be hard to read because of the content, but it can also be hard to read because of the writing style. But as you go through, you understand why it is written this way, and it is genius. This book is intense, and while it took Emer 9 years too long to publish it, that really is a testament to how perfect it is.
Coming in at number 4, we have The Invasion of the Body Snatchers by Jack Finney. I can't. This book, I don't want to sleep for weeks. Imagine an alien invasion happens and you can't even see it. Before you know it, everyone you know and love is acting strangely. Soon bodies start piling up, all while more and more people become something you can't explain. Written in 1955, Invasion of the Body Snatchers by Jack Finney is so terrifying, it has sparked 4 movies and paranoid horror literature. The story recounts the horrific experience of a silent invasion where alien beings disguised as plants steal the bodies of living humans while they sleep. The most terrifying part for me was the struggle for the characters to try and stay awake, because if they didn't, the creatures would be right behind them in like what seemed like seconds. Even thinking about it right now makes my heart race. Have you ever tried not falling asleep in math class or an exam? Yeah, imagine that, but your life depends on it. Terrifying. This is the kind of horror book that will make you want to drink like 28 Red Bulls so you never sleep again.
In our number 3 spot today, we have Exquisite Corpse. Exquisite Corpse is a horror novel that was written by Poppy Z. Bright and was published in 1996. The publication for this book was quite a process for Poppy. In 1991, she had a deal with a publishing company to write 3 books. Exquisite Corpse was the final of the 3, and this company refused to publish it due to its violent content. After sending it to multiple other publishing companies, the overwhelming consensus was that the writing was fantastic, but the content was being described as too nihilistic, too extreme, and a bloodbath without justification. Of course, however, the novel did eventually end up being published, and a lot of people now understand the reviews the publishing companies were giving it. While a fantastically written book, this story follows Andrew Compton, who is a convicted serial killer and cannibal who ends up getting a second chance at living life beyond the cell. This story is very raw and absolutely horrifying. The parts of the story I haven't told you are certainly not for the faint of heart.
Coming in at number 2, we have The Troop by Nick Cutter. This next one is Lucy McPhee, Queen of Dark approved. She loves a good scary book, does our Lucy. The Troop is basically Lord of the Flies meets Alien, kind of. I asked her why she thought this book was so scary, and she said, it's scary because the kids have to become adults real damn fast, and no one is there to help them. Also touches on how differently people react in unprecedented circumstances. Some lose their grip on reality. I love that word unprecedented. I've heard it way too many times this year. Essentially, Dr. Tim Riggs takes a group of boys out on a camping trip in Canada when out of nowhere, the troop has to battle a vicious infestation of contagious intestinal worms who starve their hosts. Some go mad and lose their grip on reality. I'll stop there so I don't, spoil everything, but considering this one is Queen of Dark approved, you know why it's on this list.
In our number 1 spot today, we have The Wasp Factory. The Wasp Factory is a novel that was published in 1984 and was written by Ian Banks. This is the first novel that was published from this writer, as the novels he had previously written had not been accepted, and this one was his attempt at writing a more mainstream novel. Well, it worked since it got published, but this novel is anything but mainstream. It follows a psychopathic teenager who is living on a secluded Scottish island. The teenager describes his childhood and the things that went on with some very gruesome details. We read not only about his past, but also the past of his family and how twisted it really is, which also gives us insight into just how wild this guy's mind really is. There are some pretty horrific depictions of violence in this book, which is what led to its mixed reviews. It certainly is a critically acclaimed novel, but it has also been called a work of unparalleled depravity, and that certainly speaks volumes about what exactly goes on.
Starting off this countdown, we have The Sorrows of Young Werther. This book has been famously associated with something referred to as the Werther effect because of the negative impact it had on readers. So this book came out in 1774 and it inspired a huge wave of people taking their lives. It was a terrible epidemic. That's how strong the influence had on its readers. So young men started to copy the main character in the book. They would dress the same as he was portrayed in the book, and then later would take their own lives the way that he did in the book. This caused the book to be banned in countries such as Denmark and Italy. It was so bad that people believed this book was cursed, and every young man that read it will soon be tempted to take their own life, even if they were in the right mindset.
In our number 9 spot today, we have The Orphan's Story. This book was originally written in the early 1600s, but it didn't end up getting published until 2018. The Orphan's Story is about a 14-year-old Spanish boy who heads to the Americas. You know, a classic coming-of-age feel-good story, right? Well, not exactly, and that is the reason it took so long for it to be published. While the curse in this book doesn't come from the story itself, there is something dark lurking in those pages. The book's publisher, Belinda Palacios, who worked on the book for 2 years, explained that throughout those years, she was often warned of the cursed book and how every publisher who had tried to work on it before ended up passing away in a mysterious way before they were able to finish the book. When Belinda looked into this, it turned out to be true. Her research showed that those who tried to edit the book before either found themselves in horrible accidents or with strange illnesses. Luckily, Belinda made it through the process unscathed, so let's hope that maybe the curse has been lifted. Either way, it's probably one I'll personally stay away from.
Moving on at number 8, we have The Lesser Key of Solomon. The Lesser Key of Solomon is a cursed grimoire that is said to contain summoning spells for over 72 demons, and no one knows who wrote it. What we do know though is that this book contains a bunch of compiled texts from the 17th century. Some of these texts tell the reader how to conjure and control spirits or demons. This book is apparently so cursed that anyone who keeps a copy of it will die or experience constant bad luck. One person who owned a copy of the book reported the book's pages turning on its own. Another time, the book violently flew across the room and towards them. Although we don't know who wrote the book, legend has it that King Solomon originally wrote it for his son. He then asked him to be buried with it. But apparently, when he was getting prepared for burial, a group of Babylonian philosophers found the book, and one of them got a vision from an angel. The angel told him to hide the book from the unworthy, so he decided to cast a spell on it to keep it from getting into the wrong hands. And that's how the book got cursed.
In our number 7 spot today, we have the Untitled Grimoires. A witch's spellbook should never be messed with. I feel like that should be obvious, but I'll put that out there because apparently it isn't. The Untitled Grimoires are a set of handwritten spellbooks that were sold online for $14,000 in 2013. The books were written in the 1960s by a high priestess of Wicca who was the leader of a coven, and they detail things like spells, incantations, enchantments, and instructions on summoning spirits and demons. So, witch stuff. This is all fine and well unless you're sitting there thinking about how you don't believe. If you are a non-believer, it is best to stay as far away as possible from these books. The seller of the books warned that any non-believers who mess with the book will bring upon themselves a deadly curse, and on the first page of the book, the Wiccan herself wrote that proceeding with the book may have serious consequences. It reads, "To those not of the craft, the reading of this book is forbidden. Proceed no further or justice will exact a swift and terrible retribution, and you will surely suffer at the hands of the craft." I think we can all appreciate the heads up she gave us on this one. Again, this is just another one I'll probably stay far away from, and not just because I don't have $14,000 to spend on a pair of books.
Coming in at number 6, we have The Catcher in the Rye. This book has been linked to a number of murders. It's believed that the book might have inspired these killings. First, we have John Lennon. When John Lennon was shot by Mark David Chapman, apparently he calmly sat down on the curb and started flipping through The Catcher in the Rye as he waited for the police. In fact, inside the book, it was later discovered he wrote, and I quote, "To Holden Caulfield, from Holden Caulfield. This is my statement." And he signed it Holden's name, who is the main character in the book. Furthermore, when police arrested him, he said, and I quote, "I'm sure the big part of me is Holden. The small part of me must be the devil." And during his trial, he even read from the book when it was his turn to address the court. But he's not the only one that's been influenced by this book. After John Hinckley Jr.'s assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan, it was discovered he too was a fan of the book, and a copy was even found on the table in his hotel room. And lastly, let's talk about Robert John Bardo. He took the life of Rebecca Schaefer. Well, he had the book in his back pocket while he did the deed. The list goes on and on. There are a dozen more people that apparently got inspired by this book and went on to harm or take someone's life. So some people believe that this book is in fact cursed and will drive the sane insane.
In our number 5 spot today, we have the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. When you're a practitioner of magic, you probably don't give the same sort of gifts that non-magic folk do. So it is no surprise that Abramelin gifted his son a book of spells and curses. In the early 1900s, this book was translated into English, and ever since then, there have been rumors swirling that the book is cursed, which makes a ton of sense considering, like I mentioned, it is a book of curses. Rumor has it that the cursed nature of this book in part has to do with Abramelin's belief that everyone has their own personal demon. The book holds instructions on how to get your demons under control through rituals and supernatural situations, and it is always risky to reach out to the spirit world, so maybe that's why everyone is feeling like this book is cursed. It's looking like unless you absolutely know what you're doing, the contents of this book just might be too powerful. Those who have had bad experiences with the book explain either bad luck or hauntings from the spirit world are what await for those who dare to read it.
Coming in at number 4, we have the Devil's Bible. The Devil's Bible, otherwise known as the Codex Gigas, is this massive 310-page book said to harness evil and negative energy. It was discovered in 1648 and is 36 inches tall, 20 inches wide, 8.7 inches thick, and weighs 165 pounds. So now there's this really creepy legend surrounding it. Legend goes that the book was written by a monk, but this monk broke his spiritual vows and his punishment was to be sealed behind a brick wall and left to die. The night before his death, he realized he wouldn't be able to finish this book. So he summoned Lucifer and asked him to complete it for him. In return, he offered him his soul. So legend goes that this book was finished by the devil himself. To make things creepier, this book is filled with drawings of the devil and other demonic entities. On one page, there's a 19-inch frightening drawing of Satan. And apparently the book also contains a bunch of dark rituals and facts like how to perform exorcisms. To top it all off, apparently at some point the book contained 320 pages, not just 310. Those 10 pages were ripped out because they instructed people on how to summon the devil. And thank gosh for that.
In our number 3 spot today we have the Book of Soiga. This one is often referred to as the Book of Death, and that alone is enough to deter me. If you happen to be braver than I, unfortunately it is unlikely that you'll be able to actually read parts of this book because nobody knows what language it is written in. While the first part of the book details different spells and incantations, the ending part is the most mysterious and where the secrets lie. All the letters in the final part are written in separate boxes, and despite people trying their absolute best, it is extremely difficult to decipher. An Elizabethan scholar named John Dee attempted to decode the book, and he apparently called on an angel named Uriel for help. The angel explained to him that only the Archangel Michael is able to interpret the text. Apparently after John Dee passed away, this book mysteriously vanished, seemingly into thin air. This was in 1608, and for years and years no one could find it until it magically reappeared again in the 19th century. I don't know about you guys, but to me that sounds like some real magic. The catch with this one, however, is that it is said that whoever deciphers the meaning of the code will inevitably die 2.5 years later. So I guess this is like the Ring of books?
In our second spot, we have the Prophecies of Nostradamus. We've talked about this dude a bunch on this channel. Basically, he's a really famous seer and prophet. He's most famous for his book Les Prophéties, which contains hundreds of predictions for future events. And what's scary is that a bunch of these predictions have come true, such as JFK's assassination, the creation of the atomic bomb, rain, and the Great Fire of London, so on and so on. So he's got some credibility. But here's the thing. Are these actually predictions, or are they a list of curses Nostradamus set out for us? A number of people think that it's the second option, and that he literally has cursed us all. He has made these things happen even from beyond the grave. In fact, he managed to curse his grave, so what says he doesn't have the power to curse a book too? Like literally he warned everyone, whoever opens my tomb will be cursed. And guess what? Legend goes that one day during a war, a couple of soldiers accidentally dug up his grave. When they did, they found him with a plaque that said 1793 on it. That was the year they opened the grave. So he predicted when his grave would be disturbed. Not only that, one of the soldiers picked up his skull and immediately was shot dead by a sniper. So yeah, the soldiers were cursed by him, and now we're all cursed by him and this book.
In our number 1 spot today we have the Grand Grimoire. This book is often referred to as the book with incredible power and has been called one of the darkest books in the world. While the author of this book is still unknown, the contents of it are things like black magic and dark, spooky secrets. It is believed that the book was written sometime around 1521, and it is split into 2 books. Book 1 details instructions on how to summon a demon and how to get the demon to do your bidding. The second book is split into 2 parts, and it details how to make a pact with a demon and how to command the spirit, but with less tools, which means it is significantly riskier than the instructions in the first book. Apparently in the book it even details how someone can call upon Lucifer or the devil. The book describes a few different demons, and it also gives spells that one can do for things like winning the lottery, love spells, becoming invisible. You know, while those spells certainly sound nice, magic like that always comes at a cost. People fear the Grand Grimoire because they worry that if anyone reads it fully, then the devil will enslave their soul. No thank you.